Hi, welcome to my April wrap-up video. I'm very sorry, it's really late, but I was really struggling in April and still feeling like I was struggling in May as well, with my reading really and my mood. It's crazy because I would never in a million years have said that I was somebody whose mood could get so low, and I think it was just a bit of a shock, and I didn't realise what was happening at the time. It was only later, and I've talked about this in one of my last videos as well, about how I was feeling, and it just has kind of dragged on through most of May really, just not as bad as it was. The point where I knew that something wasn't quite right, it wasn't just feeling a bit down, was when I thought about messaging Emily from Novels, and we have chatted quite a lot, and I was going to message her, and then this thought popped into my head, and it was only going to be a message like, you know, how you doing, how's the kids getting on, blah blah blah, and this thought just popped into my head of, no, I best not message her because then she'll reply, and then I'll be expected to reply, and I just don't want to speak to people. And a few days later I thought the same about Connor. I was going to message Connor from Connor's Library Corner, or I think that's it, and my brain's gone blank. And again I had this thought of, well, no, because he might reply and then I'll have to interact and socialise. And then it got worse because my best friend, who I've been friends with since, oh god, it's about 17, 18 years now, we were teenagers, and she sent me a message, and the thought that popped into my head was, I wish I'd never made friends with her, because then if I hadn't, she wouldn't now be messaging me, mithering me, expecting me to reply. And yeah, that's not normal. So I was struggling with everything. I was getting on with work and seeing to the kids, but reading was not giving me much joy anymore. And I think even just the thought of watching BookTube videos, never mind making them, even just watching other people's, it just felt like the last thing that I wanted to do. And I struggled with enjoying books as I was reading them. So literally up until a few minutes ago, just before I press record, I would have said to you I barely read anything in April. But I had a look at my spreadsheet, because I keep on Google Sheets, I have like a monthly TBR, and the yellow ones are the ones that I read. And when I was looked at, actually, between audio and physical or ebook, I read 13 books in April. So that's really, that was a shock to me, because I would have said that I only read like a handful, if that. It just felt like a horrible month. And so I think it's actually good that I left this wrap-up video until I'm feeling much better, because if I'd have done this at the end of April or the beginning of May, then I probably would have poo-pooed on lots of books and not been able to describe them very well. And not because they were terrible, just because of the mood and the mental state I was in. So I started the month with a book that was just incredible. In fact, it was that good that at first I thought maybe that was what had put me in like a reading funk, you know, like you just, nothing can compare because it was so good. But no, it wasn't that. Obviously, it doesn't last for nearly 2 months. So that book was called The Prison Healer by Lynette Nonny, and this was the one where I said, I am going to try fantasy. I'm not a big fantasy reader. I really struggle with it. It gets very complicated with all these fantastical, weird and wonderful worlds, and there's so much to figure out and remember that I just get a bit lost. But this one was absolutely incredible. So in this book, we follow Kiva, who is 17 years old and in prison. She works as the prison healer, so she's basically the doctor within the prison. And she is just like, head down, get on with the work. Then suddenly one day, this new prisoner arrives called Jaren. He's gorgeous, charismatic, intelligent. He's absolutely determined that Kiva will, you know, fall in love with him no matter what she says. It's kind of like she does have an attraction to him, but because people in the prison don't have long life expectancies, then she's just like, I'm not going to get involved with anyone because then I'll get hurt. So we've got all this like angsty teenage romance type stuff going on. And then the next prisoner comes along, and it's the rebel queen. And she is the person who is leading the rebels in a kind of uprising against the current government. The rebel queen has to go through 4 trials, the trial by elements. So we've got like water, earth, fire, earth. And the point of the trials is that only people who have magic in their blood can survive these trials. And if she has got magic and she proves it, then she can legally, I don't know what you would term it, but she has like a legitimate, that's the one, a legitimate claim to the throne and to the empire. But if she fails the trials, it proves she didn't have a legitimate claim, and so she's dead. So she arrives very, very unwell, and Kiva is given the job of keeping this queen alive in order to be able to go through the trials. It's very quickly realised that the queen is not, she's completely unconscious on the day of the first trial, so it's just impossible. And literally all that would happen is that the queen would be put into the trial whilst unconscious, and she would just die in it. She would never be able to save herself, even if she did have magical powers. So Kiva volunteers for her, you know. I volunteer to be tribute. It's very Hunger Games-esque. And Kiva is a fantastic chosen one. She's one of those characters that you just get behind. She is just like a fighter and a strong spirit, and she's trying to do the best by everybody, looking after people that are horrible to her, basically. And yeah, she's fantastic. I absolutely adored this book, adored it. I started it like literally the 1st of April, right in the morning, started it, and I'd finished it in about 28 hours. I could not put it down. It was just incredible. It wasn't too complicated. This is what I struggle with fantasy, and it wasn't, and that's what I was worried about. It was all set within a prison, and so it was very like, a prison can't be too complicated, you know. People are locked up, they get punished, etc. There's nothing complex about a prison. Now, I'm not sure if the series will then go on to do lots of world building and become more fantastical, but I'm going to find out, because I cannot wait to read the next in the series, and it looks like it's going to come out in October. I'm desperate to get my hands on that one. And then one of the next books that I read was The Girl Who Could Move Shit With Her Mind by Jackson Ford. I have had this on my shelf for a good 2 years, I think, maybe a little longer. No, maybe 2 years. And I had bought it full price from Waterstones. I was really interested in reading it. So I got to it in April, and yeah, it just wasn't a book for me. I don't even know how you would explain it. So we've got I thought it was YA, but it's not. It's adult, which is odd because I bought it in the YA section of Waterstones, but it's definitely adult. We've got a woman who is she's got telekinesis. She can move things with her mind. She is recruited by the government in America to do like undercover, off the book type operations and missions, where she is able to use her powers to, you know, things like she can open safes and break in places without touching things, so she's obviously not leaving fingerprints behind, etc., etc. I wasn't keen on the main character, Tegan. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I just wasn't keen on her. It was very much like a weird version of an action movie but in a book, and it just wasn't my thing. It was very, I have no words. I don't know how to explain it. It was basically just an action film in a book, but with the sci-fi twist of the telekinesis. I found it quite boring. I didn't like any of the characters at all. I didn't like the dynamics between them. And despite it being an action thing, like there was action in it, it just didn't interest me. And so I just ended up giving that a 3-star. Then I listened to an audio arc from NetGalley, When I Was 10 by Fiona Cummins. Now, this is a thriller. It follows a woman called Shannon who, when she was younger, her sister Sarah, one night Sarah snapped and she murdered very brutally both of her parents. Sarah ended up going to some kind of like children's secure unit for X amount of years, and Shannon was fostered, and then they didn't have contact at any point. So the story follows Shannon when she's like middle-aged, she's got her own daughter, she's married, etc. Sarah is released, and it kind of triggers the whole like media interest in the story again. So Shannon gets tracked down by journalists, and the harassing her, trying to get information out of her and statements and stuff about the incident. And then there was a family friend, a friend of the girls, called Brinley. She also then decides to speak out in the media, and so then Shannon ends up having to just give in and talk to her sister and the family friend Brinley, and everything, all these secrets come out about what really happened that night. It was alright, I've got to say. I didn't love it and I didn't hate it. It did take me a while to get into the story, to kind of connect with the characters and to get interested, I guess. But once I did, it was okay. There were lots of like timeline jumps, which I actually enjoy, because being able to see what was leading up to the event when they were girls, and getting the insight of what people were thinking at the time, because it does cover Brinley's point of view as well as Shannon's, and that was really good. It was just not very thrilling for a thriller. I am terrible at this game of guessing. I've said this before. I never know what's going on in thrillers. I knew from partway through the book, I think from less than halfway, I knew exactly what the big twist was going to be, and I was right, and it just kind of left me with a feeling. That's the only thing I can say. It just wasn't very thrilling. It was just predictable and okay. So I ended up giving that one 3 stars as well. Then another ARC audio that I listened to was The Good Neighbour by Richard J. Parker. This was just the right thriller to listen to. I love listening to like gripping thrillers when I'm working, and I can just, if I'm doing something mindless and repetitive or whatever, I can just really concentrate and get sucked into the story. And this was one of them. It really gripped me right from the beginning. So we follow Leah, who is middle-aged, she's married, she's been out somewhere and she's driving home. She hits a deer, and the car is damaged. Her phone battery dies, so she's got no way of ringing like the AA or whoever, or alerting anybody about this deer on this country road that she's hit. So she's she's quite near to home. She recognises the area, so she knows just a little bit further down are some houses, and she's going to go there to ask somebody if they can ring help for her while her battery's dead. So she does, and Martin answers the door at the house that she knocks on, and he is really charming, really helpful, invites her in, gives her a drink, rings the police, all that kind of stuff. And she ends up getting sorted and going home. Now, the next day, Leah thinks, do you know what? There was some chemistry between me and him, and my marriage isn't going too well. So I think I'll take a bottle of wine around to, say thank you. And then it's an excuse to see him again and see what happens, see if that chemistry's still there. However, when she turns up, there are police everywhere and that house is cordoned off. She's then told that the owner of the house, a woman, has been murdered the night before, very brutally. And that's where it all starts. This book is just, oh my god, it gets in your head. It just kind of makes you think about how a chance encounter can just completely alter the course of your life. The chance encounter with Martin, and then chaos ensues, and he's very, very creepy. He gets in contact with her, things like that. I'm not going to go too into it because it spoils it, but yeah, this was definitely something that I got sucked into so quick, and yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. And then I decided to give a poetry book a go, and I chose Is This Scary by Jacob Shear. This appealed to me because it was about mental health. I didn't choose it at the time, I was struggling myself. I'd chosen it a few months prior, and this was the point when it was due to be read and reviewed for NetGalley. But I have mentioned before, I was a mental health nurse for many years, and so I have an interest in it, and I was hoping that it would I guess give me some more insight into what it's like as a mental health patient, because it was primarily focused around his experiences on a mental health unit, and it wasn't for me. The poetry style just wasn't to my liking, and that is nothing at all on the person that wrote it. I think that poetry is very, very, very specific to people, as in like it really has to be something that you connect with. You can't just read it and enjoy it. It's got to be in the style, the language, the layout, all that kind of stuff that you specifically like. What I will say is there was some quite sensitive topics discussed, like suicide and overdoses and things like that, and being restrained on a mental health unit, and they're not nice to read about, let alone live through. So I think that Jacob was incredibly brave in speaking out about the truth about his experiences and how he felt. So this is not something, I'm not going to recommend it as such, because like I said, poetry is very specific like tastes. So it's just one of them, you've got to kind of give it a go, and if it's not for you, just move on rather than rating it lowly. So I'm not really going to rate this one because it's a case of me and not the book. Then we have got The Last Girl by Goldie Moldovsky. This is YA thriller, and it's kind of in a school, but it's not in a school, if that makes sense. It's a group of school kids who meet at school, but then the main kind of plot is about what they get up to outside of school. Now, they have got this like horror club. This book has actually got another title in America. I think it's called the Mary Shelley Club, and so it's a horror club where they love to watch horror films and talk about horror films and things like that. But what they do is they each take it in turn to play pranks on people outside of the club and try to scare them as much as possible. And we're not talking, jumping out from behind a bush kind of thing. These are very elaborate, well laid out, planned pranks. And so Rachel is new to the school. She joins the horror club, and then she is involved in some of the pranks, and the pranks start to go wrong. There is people who end up dead, but by that point all the members of the club are so tied up in it. you know, they've all got something to lose because they were all involved in the pranks, and if it gets out, then they will all, you know, they're all responsible for people's deaths, and so they are forced into a situation where they have to do the final ultimate prank, and yeah, everyone's life is at risk. This was it was quite good actually. I don't really know what I was expecting. It was a little, I want to say, like, unrealistic and unbelievable at times. Some of the pranks are so elaborate that it's kind of like, would teenagers really have been able to do that? And would they really have continued once people started dying, like their friends started dying? So yeah, but it was actually a really easy read because it's YA. It wasn't majorly complex, and the writing style was really easy to read. It was enjoyable. It was quite quick to get through. I did like the characters. I really liked the twist. I did not see the twist towards the end coming at all, of who the bad guy was. But yeah, it was really, really good, and I rated this 4-star. So that finishes up this part of the wrap up. I did not think up until now that I would be having to do 2 wrap up videos for April. I really didn't think I've read that much. So thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next April wrap up very shortly.